love the food scenes that you do because I think there's something really powerful, metaphorically, to be said about breaking bread with someone, especially when you're sitting across the table from, to your earlier point, right? Someone who's a cop or someone who you know is probably a card-carrying Republican or an NRA member, right? And there's something that is transformational about having the opportunity to eat with them. And so much of that comes out in your work in the show.
Thank you. I mean, I think, like, everyone has to fucking eat. And and then for me, like being raised in a pretty dysfunctional home, like the moment that I had with my sisters and my parents growing up, like the one time where we all really got along was when we had incredible meals together, from like breakfasts to dinners. It's where we would all just either shut up and like rejoice in this feast that was like right in front of us, or just like had happy moments. So for me, there's always been a really strong attachment to that, and that's sort of, just as you're mentioning it, where it's like not necessarily about what each of our verticals are, but sort of like that connection that we have and how they sort of tie in.
And I was reading about your culinary journey, because I think a lot of people see the fully realized, beautiful Antoni on screen, but I was reading a little bit about your journey, and you were basically like trying to make it in acting and working in food service for a number of years.
I was a busboy, a waiter, a manager, a sommelier, like all of it, from a family-run Polish restaurant with like grandmas in the basement, hand-making pierogies, to like working at Bond Street for a while. Like I've done it all. And so I have experience more on the front of house side of things, but I've always had like a strong reverence and a respect for chefs. I just thought of Bourdain. But they've always been sort of like my rock stars. And I've just always had a lot of respect for them. So for me, like, I don't know, I've always felt like it was always sort of on the outside. And like for whatever reason, I also like to perform, so I think that's why I like being a waiter, and I was a pretty damn good waiter. And so like that's why for me it was, you know, when you're a student, it's really hard. It's like tough work, it's really long hours, but like to put myself through university and while I was working and trying to like aspire for other things, it was actually kind of perfect the way that it worked out, because even during chemistry testing, they were asking me like, how has food been part of your life? And I realized that like it's been this constant that's always been there in some way, shape, or form, whether it's privately cooking for my family and loved ones and friends to working in a professional capacity, like it's always been there.
Can I tell you guys a story about him?
Yes, please.
No, this is really cute. You'll love this.
I hope so.
Okay, so when we were in chemistry audition, like when we were in this room, we were like going back and forth. There was this other person that was there for food, and he was talking, and I was like, "That's great," because you know I was like really like single eye focused. I was like, "Say whatever you want." I'm getting this job right now. Focusing. And so then Antoni comes in, and I can't remember exactly the question, but it was the first time that I remember like hearing him really talk about food. And the same year, honey, at the SAG Awards, Stranger Things won Something for Something, and the director gave this really impassioned speech. And who's the actress that I always, when I tell
Millie Brown?
Nope.
Winona Ryder.
Yes, the one who was like, yes.
Yes.
So I always, I always say Ashley Judd, but I mean Winona Ryder.
Yeah.
I really don't want to mess it up right now.
Same
So
species.
yes.
Yeah.
So, but remember when she was like, and so he starts talking about food, and I turn into
Winona Ryder.
Yes. And so I'm like, like, I want all that food. And so then, in my head, I was like, should I make a Netflix joke at a Netflix audition? Like, in my head. And so, because like I realized after like the 4th sentence of your food explanation that I was like making a full scene. And then, because he was like so talented, and like I was like, I just like want to eat everything that you know about, because I was like his like food knowledge and like the way he talks about food was like literally incredible, and I've never heard someone talk about food like that in my life.
Except cilantro.
Well, except cilantro. But no, I mean the way that you talk about your craft is so like, I mean I can be so focused on something and like the job of my life, and then you open your mouth and say 3 words about something, about what you're passionate about, and I'm like, you know, and that wasn't, and we had been in a room with lots of different people, and like I didn't have that reaction with anyone, and so you are, when you talk about food and when you talk about the way that you connect with people through talking about food, it is like very universal. Like it is such a universal language that you have with people with food. So,
yes.
Yeah.